Hey, I'm working from home today and I just wanted to pop in for a second. I get quite a few questions about my favorite supplies and what do you use for this, what do you use for that. So I thought I would pop in real quick. This is a Stay Wet Handy Palette and it has this paper. Let's see, there's 30 sheets in here. And I don't know what I paid for it, but I'm pretty cheap, probably $8 to $10. And what you do with that is you have this palette that you keep it in. And then this probably needs to be replaced right now. Let me pull this open for you. There's a sponge that goes in the bottom. And you can see mine as well used. Let me pull that back. Underneath here, this is just a plastic tray and it has a lid. And my sponge is tore up. It is probably time for a new one, but I didn't see one in there or I would have soaked a new one for you to see. That's just where old paint has soaked through the paper and got on the sponge. It's not, I cleaned, I just wrung out the sponge and cleaned it. But what I do, the reason I'm showing you this is you put the paper in there on top of the sponge and you soak it for about 15 minutes. And this then becomes what's called a wet palette. What I generally do is pick out some colors and I'll put them in my palette, my favorite colors or whatever's striking my mood at the moment. And then I start doing my backgrounds. I'm fixing to do a couple of backgrounds now. This was my mama's easel and it makes me feel good to use that, so I do use that one. And this is where I'm going to sit to work in a minute, and I have my ring light there because I'm going to do some live tutorials there in a minute. But on this palette, you put the water in and it keeps it wet underneath, so even though this is where I keep my brushes and my water, my water for my brushes, even though I'm going to be dampening that because I like to use the heavy body paints, they need a little bit of water to them, and this keeps them from drying out. But I generally work in a series of it, generally about 8. So I will choose the colors that I'm going to want to work with, put all of those in here, and if I get tired tonight and I do this at bedtime, I'll close this up, and when I come back tomorrow or the next day, 3 or 4 days even, my paint's still going to be good in here. Whenever you put it on like here's the palette paper that I used on the one the other day, when you have it on something like this, it dries up, and it actually, with the lights and everything, dried up really, really fast. So you would just turn this over, use the other side, and when you're done, throw it away. And that's palette paper, and that's a little bit wasteful to me, but I paid $1.99 for that markdown, and it's just called palette paper. Strathmore's a good brand, and and there you go. But this paint would have still been wet and usable if I had had it in my wet palette. But anyway, what I'll do then is put the paint in there, and I'll put a decent amount, and it's not going to dry up or waste because I'll put the lid on it. But I'll use that same color theme to paint 8 different backgrounds. And then from those backgrounds, once I then have my inspiration of what I'm going to paint, churches or cows or chickens or whatever, then I can have the backgrounds ready and the paintings go a lot faster. Another way is to use wax paper for palette paper, and a lot of times I'll use paper plates. When my grandkids come up and they paint with me, which they do quite often, I usually will put some on a paper plate or a piece of wax paper or something for them to use, because I'm always using my same colors out of my wet palette. I also keep just bottles. Here's some here. This one actually has alcohol in it because I would like rubbing alcohol. I'm working on some different projects with some pours and things like that. But anyways, I just keep old spray bottles. These are like Jane Iredale bottles, and I use this spray on my face. These are great little misting bottles. I actually travel with these to spray water on my clothes so they don't wrinkle and things like that. But before I start, and the regular misting bottles like I use for the DIY paint and all that work good for this too. But before I start, these are pre-gessoed canvases. I just mist the whole canvas because sometimes they're thirsty. They've been sitting in a hot warehouse or in a hot room here, and I spray those and get them ready. As far as, and I keep baby wipes out, and you'll always see me with white washcloth. This is going to look kind of gross. This is life here where I live. This is a bucket of dried paint. We live in a place where we have city water, but we have a septic system. And if you pour your paint water down your drain all the time, it can get in the bottom of your septic system and ruin it. So what I do is pour my paint water out in this bucket, and it just dehydrates, and then you could peel out that mess of dried paint in the bottom of there after a while if you want, and throw that away. But that residue would be in the bottom of our septic system if it wasn't in there. As far as my brushes, this came from Michael's, and all of these things that I have around my different craft room and my studio and everything came from Michael's, and I get them when they're half price, and I usually ask for gift cards or something when I have something like this on my mind and need another piece to it. And a lot of times around Mother's Day, they'll even mark the gift cards at 20% off. So if I can get this piece at 50% off and use a gift card that I got for 20% off, you know, I save a lot of money. So I paid, you know, 20 bucks or less for these organizers. But anyways, this is the one I use. This is just full of random acrylic brushes. Usually I keep my watercolor brushes separate from the acrylic brushes just for ease of grab, but I don't do a whole lot of watercolor. I keep just tools and palette knives and things like that in this one. Sandpaper. Anyways, I keep random tools and palette knives and stuff in there, and then sponges and sandpaper and the cheap brushes that I sometimes use on projects in here, my brush carrier and things like that. So that's extremely convenient for keeping your brushes organized. And this, I absolutely love this. This is like one of those rolling carts that they have in beauty shops. And I keep sponges and tools on the side. There's some alcohol and some tubes and things on the bottom. I usually keep my gesso and my black paint and my white paint on top. These are brushes my grandkids can use that just go in what would hold a blow dryer if this was still in a beauty shop. And I have greens and blues in that drawer, and reds, pinks, and purples in that drawer, yellows, mostly different yellows and things down there. And then this is usually metallics, browns, beiges, golds. So that's an easy way to keep my paints organized, to where if I'm getting ready to fill up my palette or whatever, I can grab out this whole drawer and dig through there to pick out the color green that I want. And this is a dormer. The dormers are also known as dog houses that sit on top of your house. My studio is in, this is what would be the attic space, but you know, it's finished out to be, it's my bedroom, my craft room, my studio, all of that is up here. I sort of live in this space. This is my personal space and I love it. But anyway, I keep canvases and things up here, and I start on them. These are some that I started on for a project I'm doing for some things of my grandkids, some mixed media stuff. But I buy the canvases in bulk. If you think you're gonna paint a lot, eventually it pays to buy your canvases in bulk. When Michael's runs them on sale, they run 70% off sometimes. Just this Artist Loft brand. This was a 5-piece of the 16 by 20s. That's the most popular size that I use. Or I get the 20 pack, or sometimes I'll order a 40 pack and then what they do is send you 2 20 packs, or sometimes a 20 pack is 4 or 5 packs or whatever. But sometimes I catch things like these on sale. These don't have any gesso. Oh shoot, I rotated my phone wrong. Sorry about that. Those don't have any gesso on them, so I'll have to gesso them. And there's some Floetrol. If anybody wants to watch me do a pour, let me know. I've got all the supplies for that. I've got the alcohol down there and the Floetrol. I get, you know, a lot of questions about that kind of thing. Like I said, I will drop some links in the comments, and I do try to find the, you know, the handiest, least expensive way to do this so that you can get a lot done with your, you know, for your time, so you don't have to feel so bad when you mess up a canvas, or for, you know, taking family funds to nourish your habit. I appreciate you, and I hope these tips help. Thanks.